Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like, and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I never thought a marriage could end quietly, not after 30 years. You imagine shouting, slam doors, tears, maybe even neighbors watching through their blinds. That's what endings are supposed to look like. Loud, messy, unmistakable. But when I walked out on Elizabeth, it took less than 30 seconds. And the strange part is this. Nothing about that moment felt sudden to me. My name is James. I'm 58 years old. I spent half my life married to the same woman, living in the same house, following the same routines until they became invisible. People talk about passion dying, but what they don't talk about is the slow erosion of presence. How someone can still be there physically while disappearing from the room entirely. When Elizabeth and I met, she had a sharp wit and an easy laugh. She used to challenge me on everything, from politics to what movie to watch on a Friday night. I liked that. I liked that she noticed things. Back then, when she asked how my day was, she actually waited for the answer. Over time, that waiting stopped. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It starts with small things you convince yourself don't matter. Meals eaten in silence. Conversations replaced by television noise. Questions asked out of habit instead of interest. I told myself this was normal. 30 years together was bound to settle into something quieter. I thought stability was supposed to feel like this. If the story already feels familiar, boldly pause for a second and tap like so it can reach the people who quietly recognize themselves in it. Elizabeth stayed busy. Always busy. Committees, brunches, charity events, endless phone calls in the other room. I supported it. I encouraged it. I told myself she needed space to feel fulfilled. What I didn't realize was that I was slowly being edited out of her life. Not removed outright, just reduced to background. I tried to reconnect in small ways. Inviting her for walks after dinner. Planning weekend trips she'd forget about by Friday. Asking her opinion on things that mattered to me. She'd nod without looking up. Sometimes she'd answer days later, like the question had finally loaded in her mind. One night, after she canceled our anniversary dinner because she wasn't in the mood, something shifted. Not dramatically. Quietly. I remember sitting alone at the table, the food untouched, realizing I felt lonelier married than I ever did single. That thought scared me more than anger ever could. If you ever felt alone while sitting right next to someone, share that feeling in the comments. This space exists for honest conversations. I stopped trying after that, not as a tactic, as self-preservation. When you reach out enough times and feel nothing coming back, you eventually learn the lesson. I focused on my work, fixed things around the house she never noticed, paid the bills, showed up. That's what husbands are supposed to do, right? Elizabeth didn't complain. That was the problem. She didn't ask questions either. It was as if she'd grown comfortable with my silence the same way I'd grown used to hers. Two people coexisting, without colliding, peaceful on the surface, hollow underneath. There was no affair that I could prove, no explosive fight, no single betrayal anyone could point to and say, that's where it broke. Just absence, day after day, year after year, a marriage starving quietly while pretending to be full. One evening, as we sat in the living room, she scrolling, me staring ahead, I realized something chilling. If I stood up and left right then, she might not even look up. That thought didn't hurt. It clarified. Type the word invisible in the comments if you understand that realization more than you wish you did. That night, lying awake beside her, listening to someone who no longer felt like my wife breathed, I made a decision. Not to threaten, not to negotiate. Just to leave. I didn't plan a speech. I didn't rehearse anything. I didn't need to. I had already said everything for years without being heard. What I didn't know was how fast it would actually happen, or how completely she wouldn't see it coming. The next morning didn't feel dramatic. It felt efficient. I woke up before Elizabeth, showered, dressed, and stood in the bedroom looking at a life that no longer felt like mine. The closet was split evenly, but the air wasn't. I took a single suitcase, not because I was leaving forever in that moment, but because I needed distance to think clearly. I moved quietly, not out of fear, but because I didn't want a conversation that would go nowhere. In the kitchen, Elizabeth sat at the table, coffee steaming, scrolling through her phone. I paused, waiting for her to notice me. She didn't. I said her name once. She looked up, mildly annoyed, as if I'd interrupted something more important. I told her I was leaving. Not for the day. Not for space. Leaving. She blinked, glanced at the suitcase, then laughed softly and said, "Don't be ridiculous, James. You'll be back by dinner." That was the moment. 30 years reduced to assumption. I told her I wouldn't. Her expression shifted, not to fear, but confusion. She asked why. I didn't list grievances. I didn't argue facts. I just said, because I've been alone here for years, and I finally accepted it. She opened her mouth, then closed it, searching for a response that never came. I walked out. 30 seconds. No shouting. No tears. Just clarity. If this moment hit you, consider sharing this story with someone who might be silently standing at the same door. Sometimes perspective saves years. I stayed with a friend the first week. Elizabeth called twice. Texted once. All practical questions. No apologies. No curiosity. I realized then that leaving wasn't what shocked her. Losing convenience was. I met with a lawyer, not to punish her, to protect myself. When the papers were served, she finally sounded emotional, angry, accusatory. She said I blindsided her. I almost laughed. In the comments, do you think emotional absence counts as a warning? Let's talk about that honestly. The house sold faster than expected. We divided things cleanly. 30 years condensed into signatures and boxes. Elizabeth told mutual friends I changed, that I became cold. I didn't correct her. Cold is what it feels like to someone who never noticed warmth leaving. Months passed. My life simplified. Fewer explanations. Quieter mornings. I learned what peace actually felt like when it wasn't confused with avoidance. I started sleeping better, eating better, laughing, occasionally, without effort. People asked if I regretted leaving. I told them the truth. I regretted staying too long after realizing I was no longer chosen. One evening, Elizabeth emailed me, not about paperwork. She wrote that she missed me, that she hadn't realized how much I did, that maybe we could talk. I read it twice, then once more. I felt nothing, not anger, not satisfaction, just closure. I replied politely, briefly. I wished her well. I meant it, and I didn't go back. If you believe self-respect sometimes means walking away quietly, share this story. Not take sides, but to remind people that silence can still be a choice. Leaving didn't make me a hero. It made me honest, about my limits, about what love requires to survive. I didn't leave because I stopped loving Elizabeth. I left because love without presence isn't love. It's memory. Today, my life is smaller, but it's mine. I don't measure my worth by being needed. I measure it by being seen. And I will never again confuse endurance with loyalty. Final question for you. At what point does staying become self-betrayal? Answer below. And if this story gave you clarity or courage, comment your perspective and subscribe for stories that explore the moments we don't talk about but should.